plan for the next little bit. We're going to plan the breakouts. We believe that we have 3 breakout rooms. Well, we can make as many, but we think there's 3 breakout tracks. And for those of you who are new, the way this worked, and it worked really well last year, is that once we've decided on what the breakout tracks are and who's, that we've got enough people going to each one. So let's say we do end up with 3, then we'll create the 3 breakout rooms. People will go there. So you've got about an hour or so in the morning, probably a little bit more because it may not take us that long to plan from now until the top of the hour, but we'll see. And you're basically working on whatever that is. So, here's the proposed tracks. Number 3 is not going to be a track. So we've got payer coverage, we've got a better discharge summary, and then the specialty data use cases. So the idea is that you'll go away and decide on what it is you're going to produce. So last year, I know I was involved with the care plan, and we produced the sample care plan. We actually 2 or 3 different examples on what would it look like this, what would it look like that. So I would expect similar things out of the breakout rooms. So you've got the first, once we split out, you've got until 12:15 Eastern to work on your examples. Then we get back together just before lunch just to see how it's going. And meanwhile, Susan and Jaginder and I will be popping in and out. Last time I was leading one of the groups, so I wasn't able to, but this time I'm not going to be leading. We've got leaders. So we'll be popping in and out, making sure things are going, but we've got that touch base just before lunch when we'll see how things are going. Then we'll have lunch, an hour-long lunch. Then we'll go back and we've got 2 hours where we can do the continue working on the examples and finalize them. And then we've got a long break there. Then we have a report out from each of the tracks. So the idea is once you're done, then you can do a report and say, here's what I did, here's what here's what we didn't do, here's some new questions, here's some actions that we have out, and so on. And then we'll have the closing discussion after that. I'm leaving at lunch. Some of you know I have my wife's father-in-law died last week, and so the funeral's this afternoon, but Jaginder will be more than capable in my hands to help out with the report out and the closing discussion, and Susan as well. So unfortunately, I won't be able to be with you guys this afternoon, but that'll be all right. So having said that, here are the tracks, and we had picked out some leaders, and we were hoping that people from the examples task force were going to show up, and I don't see Brett. Hopefully he joins, but he might be coming a little later. So the first one was working on the payer coverage. So basically, people looking at insurance cards and using that to make the payer section and looking at the payer section. So Rochelle, and I don't see Linda on, maybe she's going to join in a bit. We had the 2 of you leading that.
Okay, yes, and I have Jessica and Michael from our implementation team. Okay. We're going to join, one's developer, one's QA, and we're going to kind of just hack through it, but we do need either Brett or Linda for support.
Okay. Well, hopefully they come. I can join to act like them in the meantime, but so okay. So there you go. So if you're interested in that, for all the other people, if you're interested, the idea will be, as Rochelle really nicely said, hack away and make a payer section and see how that works, given what the insurance card is. So that's going to be breakout session 1. We don't have either Lisa or Catherine yet. Well, that'll be hard.
So for the discharge summary, we do have a discharge summary, and Brian and Matthew from our team will be there. Okay. So we do have something to show, and I'm sure Lisa can kind of run through that with us and correct us as much. But Catherine's input is going to be really important for us. What I'd like to do is see the difference between expectations and what the spec guide has and what ONC is requiring, like she was talking about yesterday. And we did the ONC requirement. So seeing something different there and understanding the changes that could be made or advised, because all the advice we gave last year about clinical notes and all the notes was vital to our clients to have some instruction and have something to go for. So this is really important as well.
Yep. And so, yeah, that's what that one's going to be about, is using, and I saw Lisa just joined, so that's great. So you basically using the guidance that Catherine presented to us yesterday, and we do have access to her slides, so we can bring those up, but hopefully she joins. And then, yeah, Lisa and Catherine, or Lisa, will be leading that. And fantastic that the HIT's got a discharge summary to start with. Basically, yeah, what do they look like today? What should they look like? And what guidance, and coming up with guidance, reaffirming the guidance that Catherine had in her presentation. So that's what breakout session 2 is going to be. Like I said, the persistent IDs we'll come back to that. And then the
John,
breakout.
did you say DHIT, because I just got here, did you say DHIT wanted to provide a discharge summary to start with? Could somebody
just as
email
you were
that to
joining,
me?
Rochelle just told us that.
Hey, Lisa. Yeah, Brian from our team is going, and Matthew from our team will be on that track with a couple of others. We have a discharge summary that passes ONC certification. That's about it. So
can
any
you email
advice?
that to me? Yeah, can you email that to me in the background?
Brian, yeah, I can.
Thank you. I'll put my email
Brian, can you get that to me? Okay, actually, if it's in chat, Brian, just email it directly to Lisa and copy me on it. Okay. All right, and then, yeah, so that's good there. I think we were moving on, sorry.
Go ahead. No worries. And then the third breakout track that we currently have is continuing on from this conversation that Jim led yesterday, is a specialty data track. And so the actual specific use cases that you guys are going to do is, from what I understand, is once you get the group together, you'll determine the specific, and there were a number of options that Jim had in his presentation yesterday, so you may do more than one. And then you guys, the intent again will be to work on specific, either creating some examples or some guidance and such and so forth. So that's the third one, is the specialty data use cases.
Can I comment again?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so on that track we have Robin from Ifinity works with us with Connect DHR, our product. We've been working with her to manually edit a CCD to get it to pass the ONC test tool. So Matt Davis from our team and Sage will be, and Lawrence will be there, and Godson. So we have like 4 people there, but really it's going to be Matt Davis and Robin helping and asking questions to get the section that we created to be there. So I just want to let you know that we have an example for that as well. And we're not sure if it's good to go or not.
Okay, perfect.
Good. No, that's great.
Yep. So that's the 3 rooms that we've got. Are there other breakout tracks that people have? I mean, we can obviously create more rooms. I think that's 3 is good. I think that's what we did, from what I could, it was a year ago, so my memory, but that's what we had last time was 3, and that was the right size, especially given we've got about 30 participants. So then you're looking around 8 to 10 participants per track, or hopefully that works. It works out that way. All right, then the other one that we had a possible breakout track, but Joe had decided that it probably couldn't live on its own, is the persistent IDs problem. And so Joe, I'm not sure, I saw your emails and we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Given what people are doing in 1 and 2, so I'm not sure if those tracks, you popping into those. I mean, I think the idea, Joe, is that you were going to pop in and see if that specific track could benefit from a discussion around persistent IDs. And I think that's great. I think you're also not here for the whole day, so that's okay. I suspect the specialty data one, it will that'll be a bigger conversation for them. But yeah, so for everyone else, Joe is here to champion the cause for persistent IDs. And we were just talking about this before it started. I mean, this is, it's in the companion guide from the very beginning, use of consistent identifiers, right? So this is something that we've been talking about for a while. And so it's a real implementation challenge, or it seems to be. Maybe it isn't. So that's why Joe is here. So yeah, he'll be popping in and out to the different tracks to see if you guys can need help or can use that in your sections and your examples that you're creating. So basically, did I get that right, Joe? Is that what your idea was?
That was the basic idea. Except I wasn't quite sure whether or not. So I've coordinated a little bit with Jim And so I think we'll have a little dedicated
Okay,
slot in the afternoon, like 20 minutes or something, where we'll talk about it in the specialty data track. I hadn't coordinated with the first two tracks.
okay. No, that's
about
fine. If
dropping
that's
in.
where you're planning to go, is especially, that's where I thought would, the
Yeah,
benefit
yeah.
would be there. So
Yeah.
that's,
That's perfect. Yeah, no, Jim put some time aside, so no, definitely that'll work. Thanks,
okay.
Joe.
Good.
Okay,
Dean,
great.
thank you.
So-
Also, Rochelle, thank you for making a comment. This is Robin. Jeremy Law is also with Ifinity, and I'd like him to be with us in our iCare team. He is our product manager for our Ifinity EHR product.
Good, good.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So if
So
Joe's
the way
going to
that-
cover his session in session 3, with session 4, then DHIT, you'll need to shift to support that when it's time. Can we
Okay.
give it, can we have a heads up of when y'all start covering that maybe in the other tracks?
Sure.
Thought it was going to be
I'll
a separate.
chat. I'll ping you.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Okay, so the way that this is going to work is we've got breakout rooms and we'll create them. And then basically you pick the breakout room you want to go to using Zoom. And then you have the ability, as Rochelle was just sort of alluding to, you have the ability to leave one breakout room and go to another if you need to, or if you want to. Hopefully, you know, you don't leave and leave 3 people behind. But so can I get, let's just see. Yeah, it sounds like we've got, you know, people that are planning to participate. There's a reaction. You can how many, you can put your hand up. How many people are planning on joining the payer coverage track? If you use the hands up. I got 1. I know it's more than that.
Oh. Hold on, trying to put my hands up.
There we go.
It's under the reactions button.
Yeah.
Okay, I gave a thumbs up. I'm trying to raise my hand. There we go.
So thumbs is good. Yeah, any reaction will do. All right, we have, I think some people, so 5, 6, 7. So, okay, that's good. So if you guys want to put your hands down, the discharge summary, how many people are planning to go to that one? Aaron, beginner friendly. That's an interesting one. I got 5 or 6 for that. That's I don't know. That's a good one. I suspect Lisa's really good. So the discharge summary might be of interest. I think it really is what interests you. You know, so I don't know which one's going to be more beginner for. Probably actually the specialty data. I know Jim and Dennis, you've got some people who are not necessarily technical, so that one might be a bit more beginner friendly. All right, everyone, thanks. Good. So we do have that's, and then you know the rest of you may or may not be going to the specialty data use case. So that works. So we've got enough critical mass for each one. So that's good. Are there any questions before we break out? Yeah, so Lisa is encouraging you, Aaron, to go to the payer one. I know she raised some of the issues yesterday, so that might be useful.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
I was going to suggest payer as well. I think that's important
Mm-hmm.
for newbies because it's coming down the road. It's not something you've done yet.
Right. Okay. So obviously we're a bit early, but that's fine because I know I remember last time that we needed more time in our breakout session. So we will create the breakout sessions.
So I've actually created them, John. Do you want me to open them up?
Yeah, let's open them up.
All right. Now,
So
So
John's
we're
the
good until we do a touch base at 12:15.
Correct. Yeah, 12:15. That's when we get back together again, and we'll come and let you guys. We'll come and let you guys know. You know, 5 minutes, and then bring everyone together.
and while John is the Zoom expert, everybody thinks I am, but I did create these that people should be able to enter them themselves, right?
Yep. And so there'll be you should have a button that says breakout rooms. And it currently lists everyone in the, in the general session. And then there's the 3 breakout rooms, and you can just click the join to head over there. And the moment you do that, you're no longer here. So everyone, off you go.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Where are the links for the breakout sessions?
There should be a button on your Zoom bar that says breakout rooms.
Looking for that.
Zoom bar means the bottom.
Yep, and if it's not on the bottom
breakout
bar,
room.
then it's within the 3 dots.
I see it. Breakout rooms button. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Payer coverage.
Joe, are you gonna head over to the specialty, or are you just gonna hang out with the cool kids?
What
room is that one?
Where are the cool kids? Yeah, good point. Sarah, do you need help getting to a breakout room?
I need to go find the specialty room. So yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Sorry, I had to step away. I'm just coming
Oh,
back.
no
I will
worries.
get myself. I will choose
Okay.
a breakout room.
That's what I thought. Yeah, if you, there should be a breakout room button, and then you can choose which one you want to go to.
Now, how do I choose?
Sarah, did I hear you? How do I do it?
I said, how do I choose? No, I can get in. I just don't know which one I want to go to.
You know, you can float like a butterfly and hit all 3 throughout the day.
I'm gonna have to jump between a few because there's so much good stuff here. Okay, thank y'all. I'm on my way.
Yes, I need to go over to payer coverage.
All right.
All right, so I think it's just Joe Ginder and I as the cool kids left.
And then have you been pausing or stopping the recordings?
Pausing. And in fact, I will.
Ukulele, baritone ukulele, and a banjo ukulele. That's all been recorded. All right, so let's go around the room and see how we were doing. I'll just go in the order of the groups here. So payer coverage. So it took us a little while to understand all the different parts of payer, and thank you to Matthew. Yes, it was Matthew from DHIT for helping start. And we've actually been working on a I will show my screen. We've been actually working on the existing policy activity example and modifying it to include a bit more information about where the different IDs go. And now we were just working on some of the extra IDs that are not necessarily in the companion guide, but that we found on some other cards. So RX bin, RX group, RX PCN, those ones. And we were just looking at one of the alternate or one of the extensions, the SDTC identified by extensions, to see how to do that. And then we ran out of time. So we're going to get back to that in the after lunch. Any questions? No? Okay. Discharge summary group. Lisa, Dee Dee, anyone who wants to tell us about how supposedly this fantastic group, as Susan was saying, how well you guys were doing.
Yeah, Lisa, we're not hearing you. You're on mute, but we're seeing slides. She's got to figure out how to unmute herself.
Unmute. There we go.
There you
Double
go.
muted. Okay. So when I jumped back, it muted me. So what we did is we built on the presentation that Catherine gave yesterday and started with that the recommendations around what the ideal content in a discharge summary C-CDA should be. And we went out to start with examples that might be available that we could build off from. And we found one older one from the examples, C-CDA examples task force. And we found one from an older version of the companion guide, and DHIT provided one that came out of the testing space. And so we analyzed those three examples to see kind of where our best starting point might be, which one had the closest amount of content that matched up with what the recommendations were. And we also looked at where these documents had additional content that wasn't in the recommended collection, and did a little bit of goofing around thinking about how to deal with this the ordering problem, and whether or not there was a different style sheet that maybe could help us out at all with that, and kind of came to the conclusion that there wasn't. But we spent some time kind of getting back to the confusion around US CDI and clinical notes there. And as a result of all that conversation, we established a goal for ourselves after the break that we will take the companion guide R2 sample, which was the closest. It was only missing one of the recommended sections. And we would add the hospital consultations to it, kind of come up with some content to show. We would do a little bit of work on fixing up the procedures and the results section to improve the way that that sample was done, because it doesn't really match with what Catherine's hoping for around labs, diagnostic imaging, clarifying how those things get represented. And we would add some guidance on how to have a clinical notes section inside a discharge summary document, which had discharge summary clinical note activity in the discharge summary document. We thought we would add some comments to our sample to make sure that people understood the importance of this single encounter focus and what that meant for the encompassing encounter in the header, and if an encounter section was included in the body. And then maybe if there's time, we would demonstrate in this sample how a bunch of sections that are all sort of a part of an assessment and plan could be compiled together as subsections of an assessment and plan section, so that people would at least see what it means in a case where more content is provided, but you want to be able to kind of roll it up or minimize it into a single area in the document, how you could use a subsectioning strategy to make that possible. And we didn't really come up with any conclusions about the guidance we're going to provide on order, but we will want to try and say something about how to deal with this problem, because Catherine's asking for the standards to require a certain order to create the documents in, and we just, we know that given the way that XML is and just the whole positioning on that's probably not going to fly. So we're going to try and come up with some other recommendation on how best to deal with order that will likely focus on style sheet stuff. That's what we're thinking of. Brian, you asked me to show something when we got back to show the group. Was it something more than this, or did you want me to show something in the XML?
think it was that Matthew. Matthew was asking.
Oh,
for something.
Matthew.
Yeah, we
Was
have
that-
a bigger report out later. I know we have one more group. I don't know.
Yeah, this is
Yep.
just how things are going,
Yep.
so.
Yeah, so this is, our goal is to produce a new, an IAT discharge summary. And it's, that's what we're aiming for this, so that'll be our output from it. And it will have a lot of comments in it around, what we did and how it addressed the recommendations.
Okay, specialty data folks. Jim, do you want to tell us how things went?
Are you there, Jim?
Or
Sorry, I
Dennis?
was muted. So I just want to make a couple of comments that we sort of combined a bunch of newbies with some really experienced people, and we found that we needed everybody. So we really ended up looking and focusing on the physical exam section, and there was pretty much consistent agreement that more guidance, more information needs to be in the implementation guide for that section to support the data from the specialty EHRs. So Dennis will talk about what was sort of created in that process.
Yeah, so we struggled a little bit to just try and get some general direction on how we would approach the different areas, but we went back to the drawing board to try and say, okay, let's start and define, better what a physical exam is, and then, what sections are available under the physical exam. And then we decided, well, we'll flesh out, at least for eye care, which will apply to other ones, a structure and an organization that we can actually apply to eye care that can then be put into the examples task force and validated against. And so this is just the start of, being able to put down the different levels, starting from the physical exam itself down to the eye care, and then how we would structure the data as it's recorded and captured for eye care, with the understanding that this could be, applied to other disciplines like the ear narrative, and we have all the different types of physical exam narratives that are available. So we're just starting to get into the meat of it, and then hopefully what I can do by the end is we'll have an example of something that kind of fits this exact structure in an XML format. So we're still working on that.
Well, it looks good. That's great.
So, Jean, I don't know where the time would be, but I think one of the things that's interesting about physical exam is that it uses subsections. It's the one place in consolidated CDA where they acknowledge that you can't not have subsections.
Yeah.
It was adopted from IHE, which has always been using subsections very effectively in many of their CDA document templates, and so I would be interested at the IAT sometime today before this whole thing is over to get weigh-in on the acceptance of EHRs to process documents that utilize subsections and get confirmation whether everybody's on board that that's a valuable strategy that we should be able to embrace or stay away from.
Sure.
Yeah, and Matt S from Epic commented a little bit on that, because in this case, in order to group like when you're performing a physical exam, you're recording the results, so you're performing different types of tests, and that apply to different areas. So we're putting result organizers within result organizers, which is a little bit strange, and it feels a little bit awkward, but yeah, exactly, Lisa. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. It looks like all three groups have been having some great progress. So we're at lunch now. It's a 1 hour lunch break. Linda, Rochelle, and Dave Carlson, I emailed you the XML that I was working on. It's in my fork, so you guys can't see it, and I'm not here in the afternoon. I just realized that. So I emailed it to you guys, and then hopefully you guys can figure out in the breakout who's going to continue editing. So
No worries.
So, yeah, we'll just take yours and make our own fork.
We'll send it. That, or we could send it back to you, and you.
Yeah, if you want to do that, if you want to edit the XML that I sent you and then send it back to me, and I can drop it back in the fork.
That sounds good.
All right, so yeah, so on the agenda now, we got an hour for lunch, and then when we get back at 1:30, you know, wherever that is in your day, we'll be the 2 hours then for the breakout tracks in the afternoon. Then we've got a longer report out to show things, and it is an hour and 15. So Lisa, we could probably have some discussion around the result organizers and some other questions like that. And then we've got the closing discussion and plan for the August IAT afterwards. Like I said, I'm heading off to a funeral this afternoon, so I want to thank everybody for coming to this IAT. I'll, you know, for those of you at the work group meeting, I'll see you there, and I will see if those of you who are not coming but are going to come to the August IAT. That'll be great to see you guys again, and I thank you very much for everything you guys have done so far. You've made this, I think, a very successful IAT. So thank you, and I'll leave you in the hands of Susan and Jaginder, and have a good lunch, everyone.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks,
Talk to
Sean.
you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll take our break now, and,
Yeah.
and we'll look to have. All right, everyone, welcome back. Sounds like there was lots of really great discussion and progress this afternoon. We're going to go through with our report outs. Which group would like to go first?
Let everybody jump at once, right?
Exactly. I'll also add that if you have any materials that you'd like for us to include the notes, please send them to Susan, and we'll make sure that we include them with our materials.
Lisa, are you back from break yet? I don't want to
Yes,
put you
I
on the
am,
spot.
Dee Dee.
Do we want to go
Yes,
first?
I am.
Do we want to go first?
I mean, I wanted to, since we took up a little bit of extra time at the middle one and we're pretty well organized, I wanted to kind of offer
Gotcha.
somebody else to go first if they
know.
wanted to.
You want to jump out there, payers?
I'm ready if you are, Dave. You got the file.
Go ahead.
I'll share and we can all talk.
All
There
right,
we
take
go.
it away.
I
Thank
was
you.
on mute. So sorry, guys.
So this is where we landed on our example. And we were trying to basically we all pulled up various insurance cards that we had and trying to look at each of the different sections and figure out where we felt like we could put certain information. So if I'm going down my card, or I'll go down the file. So in
Just to be clear, we start with policy activity as in our act.
Yeah.
I mean, as the template we started with, we didn't start in the full payer section.
Yeah, in the full coverage activity.
And then
Yeah.
for this activity was the idea to come up with, you know, a gold standard pair representation, or what was the end goal here?
To find a place for all the numbers
on
on an insurance card.
Like, I have an insurance card, how do I share it?
Some were very easy because they had been defined by US CDI and therefore clearly defined in US in the companion guide. But there were others that hadn't been defined. And we have a couple follow-up questions too. But you want me to go through, or you want to go through?
If
Dave,
you want
from
to
the
go
top?
through, and I can highlight
Sure.
as we're going through.
Awesome. So the group number is defined by US CDI, and therefore in the companion guide is going here in the policy activity ID. So we put it there, and then we realized that it had equivalents in RX, and also we at the last minute decided to put plan ID here because it's the same conceptually similar level. So since we have multiple identifiers, it's really hard. Most people don't know what the roots are for the payer. So it was really hard to tell which number was which number. So that's why we took advantage of this new SDTC extension that was added sometime in the last year-ish called Identified By. And Matt, that's why we borrowed Matt from Team 3, thank you. And he gave us insight onto how to create that here. So inside this SDTC identified by, you put the matching ID, and then you put what a code to represent what type of identifier it is. In this case, we use the same identifier, or same code system used in fire, the coverage class code, and it had an OID, and so we use that here, and then we put the code value and display name. So you can tell, for example, that the 320221 is the group number, and the where am I at? 394952 is the RX group. So you can distinguish those two, and then of course we did the same thing for plan.
Yeah. So Linda, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, and the way you just said it, that the definition of this is that this should be the group number, right? That's what you said the official definition was.
Right.
And we're repeating this information down in these identified by. So I don't think we should even have those two lines. Maybe should just be taken out. Why do you have to?
You have the extension relies on them matching an identifier. That's the type code of REL means they relate to another.
Yeah, that just really.
I know it bugs.
Especially
it really bugs
considering-
Dave. You see that note up there to talk to Benjamin Fleschner. So as to why we didn't make it an attribute on the ID. I think there was a RIM issue, but neither Matt nor I could remember. I don't know if anybody else on structured docs calls remembers why.
I mean, as we're all looking at this, is this bothering anybody as much as it is me?
It's definitely a little bizarre, but in principle, it can get the job done.
Right, yeah, I guess to me, it makes these from a practical level unusable, because these could be in any order, so I can't depend on this first ID being.
You should never count on order in a C-CD.
Right. So that's the only way to know what is going on in an act in the payer section then is you have to have these. I guess if you don't have an RX group or a plan number and all you have is one ID, I guess then you could assume it's the group number, but beyond
if they were
that-
compliant with the companion guide.
Right.
But the companion guide doesn't require it. I think it just says if you're putting it in, this is where it goes.
Yeah. But again, so from a practical level of I've got a payer act 22.4.61 in this document, and I want to know how to get it into my tables that are defining what's on an insurance card and insurance information from a patient. That, as we've laid it out here, you can't even, these IDs are unusable. You basically have to have some SDTC identified by sections. Because I don't need.
I think that's accurate, and that's why we had to make the extension, because
right.
the IDs, as they were syntactically able to be represented, didn't have enough information in them.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that we have to essentially duplicate things instead of, if I do one here, it's just unfortunate that it just isn't, pretend I have a.
History is sometimes unfortunate. And one of the things that you end up with in the standards world is you get decisions that were made previously, which lock in requirements. So we can't not have those IDs.
And it's
well, I'm not saying we wouldn't have those IDs. I'm saying, why aren't these identified bys like
we
this?
couldn't add the extension to the ID structure. We had to make something new called identified by, which was syntactically something new and different. We could not modify the ID data class.
Do you remember why, Lisa?
I don't. All I remember was it was a battle with Austin.
Okay,
and
if
he
it was a battle with
firm on
Austin,
his
that sounds like a
position.
RIM thing.
Yep.
So moving on. So we
Go
did
down.
the same thing. If you go down into the performer
Assigned
section,
former
this
assigned
is
entity.
under assigned entity. This is where the payer goes. And so the latest guide said you should use some I forget what the term was, openly available. There it is. Openly available assigning authority, and it suggested NAIC is one of those. So in here, our XYZ insurance company is identified to NAIC as 99999. And then we add, at the same level, we added the RX-BIN and RX-PCN based it upon work that Keith Boone did over a decade ago, where he suggested that they belong at the payer level. Again, a lot of this stuff is open, very open for discussion with FM and structured doc. But based on that, we did the same thing there, and we added the SDTC identified by to show you which was which. So you could identify the RX-BIN from the RX-PCN, et cetera. We didn't have to have that for NAIC because that is a known
This route
authority.
means, yeah, this is an NAIC. This means XYZ insurance.
And then
these,
is
I
that
should
the one?
get rid of these. Signing authority name should be just the
Insurance. We've come to understand.
Yeah.
Oh, our friend Matt. Thank you, Matt. And then we did a couple of things down below. Lisa, you identified when we talked about that the display name, which was bugging me. We ended up having the wrong code system name. It was supposed to be roll class instead of roll code, and we verified that. We went and looked it up in I can't remember. I think that one was in VSAC. We also added, so that some of our concepts made sense, we changed our payer type to be a PPO. Because if it were Medicare, you wouldn't have a child with a subscriber, and we wanted to represent that in this example. So we looked that up, and one of the things we came across, where is that, Dave? Up higher,
It's farther down.
Oh, further down.
Down here, covered party. So now down here at the covered party.
No,
So this performer is the insurance company. This is all
where's
insurance
the
company.
PPO thing now that you put in?
The child stuff down below.
But no, yeah. I mean, that's up here. That's the code. That's this code information up here near
right. And so we changed that to PPO. The point I wanted to make here is, if anybody is looking for that first value there, the 5.2 code system that ends in 5.2, it's X12. It's really hard to find.
And
we finally found it.
This is where we found it.
Yeah, not really X12 source, but in
it's this Tennessee thing, but it's in here.
And we'll take that out as it gets proofed, but we just wanted to have it there as a breadcrumb because it took us forever to find it.
Do you know if this externally defined code system is listed in THO in the area where external code system identifiers are available?
I don't. I can look for it though. If Dave would do me the kindness of dropping it in chat, I'll look for it in there while other groups are presenting.
What am I dropping in chat?
The one that ends in 5.2 that says it's X12.
Line 30.
Yeah. Yep. I will do that right now.
Thank you.
And the code system name too at line 29, so Linda can tell if it's got the right name or a name that matches to what the external code system is registered in THL.
There you go.
So Lisa, when it has like where it says parentheses X12, would I expect to find that there as well in THL?
Yes.
Thank you, because it should match, right? The code system name should match.
Yes.
Thank you. And then lastly, we went down and we just talked a little bit about the subscriber versus dependent and how that's modeled in in C-CDA. Not that I live in fire most of my life, but down here, the first covered party is oh no,
Right here. Yeah.
yes.
And that's the child.
And the participant role is the patient. So that would, the under coverage, you put the patient. And if the code there under participant role is self, you would never have a holder loop down below, because that means that it's you. You are the insured party if you're the patient. And then the HLD loop is only added, like in our scenario, where the patient is a child and the subscriber is would be a parent, because the relationship, right? And therefore we have a HLD loop where we put the identifier. We're trying to be a little, oh yeah, go
Do we
ahead.
want to maybe move this down here and give like Bobby
No.
up here? Well, this
No.
was this, what do you mean?
That's how that patient is listed with
You're-
the insurance company, the dependent.
Right, and but wouldn't we also have who owns the policy down here?
I don't think there's a name with that holder.
No, because they don't look up the patient by name at the insurance. They don't look up the subscriber by name at the insurance company, only the patient. So we had a couple people at a structured doc call when we reviewed this say that one of them said that they're like maiden name, you know, maybe they had their policy under their maiden name and got married that year. So that's why you might have a need for a different name that the health plan has. And, you know, it takes a while to get your marriage license and blah, blah, blah. The other scenario
Linda,
was.
I'm confused. Are you saying the patient playing entity name, patient at row 119, and then subordinate to that playing entity name is the subscriber?
No, it's the patient.
Oh, I thought this was a child.
Yeah,
it
so
is.
that's
So
why
Frank can't be a child.
He's Mr. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I didn't like the Mr. I was gonna call him like Bobby or something.
We
just
don't
to
have
give
the
him-
record target, so we don't know. But there you go.
So Bobby.
I think
Everyman.
Robert Everyman is one of those names that's allowed by HL7 as a like Eve Everywoman
Well,
and
Robert
Robert
is Bobby's
Everyman.
dad. I think Robert is
Alrighty.
Bobby's dad. Okay.
Alrighty.
Which is what I was trying to put down here. I was like, oh, then the power,
Yeah,
but you're claiming they would never have a
And
name
I have to
information.
go look at the IG because Benjamin had an argument that that should always be present, the playing entity, and I don't remember where that got landed on.
That's why I wanted to put it down here and just to make for this example, you know, okay, it's, you know, Robert.
I don't think it's allowed down there, but
it's the same thing. It's a participant role.
well, I guess that's right. It could be allowed but not defined.
Right. It's not that they tell you can't, it's just they don't tell you that you can or should.
Right. And Benjamin's argument was it should always be there. I don't know if somebody can look at the latest IG while I'm talking to see if it got changed about whether that's required now. When we talked about it initially, it was not required. It was only to be sent if the name was different. Oh, we need that little. Yeah.
So that's okay. So it's here as an example, but a lot of times you wouldn't put playing.
Well, if somebody can check the IG, we'll find out if it got changed. It was a JIRA tracker, and I never saw the final resolution of it. The other thing you can have under playing entity is the date of birth, in case that you know, sometimes your actual date of birth. We had somebody at the structured doc saying, you know, my date got entered wrong with my insurance company, and we can never fix it. So the date on the system would be different than the date they had to send it in under insurance to get it paid. How the system does that on the other end, on the PM side, is practice management side, is interesting. So but that's what I think that's all we did here. We didn't, this final loop down here is for referral. I don't know if you remember, Lisa, but I almost pulled my hair out when I started looking at it, but we didn't get that far today about if
Mm-hmm,
a referral or a prior auth. The idea is that you specify down here yet again who you got a prior auth from. You repeat the information up above, which doesn't really logically make sense, and it's an entry relationship at the same level, but whatever. And then you could put a prior auth number down there. I do think as prior auth becomes more important to CMS with their EPA NPRM that came out this year, that it is likely that this is something that might get added to US CDI at some point in the future. So perhaps we should think about it, but we didn't get that far today, and nor do I have my brain wrapped around it enough to understand
I
it.
did look up for you on the holder, and there is now a line in there that says, just floating, non-conformance language, kind of like light gray, that says, when the subscriber is the patient, the participant element describing the subscriber shall not be present. This information will be recorded instead in the data elements used to record member information.
Oh, so is decide never to put playing entity in unless it's different, is what I'm hearing you say.
But it would
Never
be different,
to
but
put participant holder.
Oh, that's a
it's a
subscriber.
policy holder. This holder
yeah.
subscriber.
Right.
So this section.
What did it say,
That's right.
Lisa? Because that sounds
Yeah,
very wrong.
Here, I'll show you. I'll show you
Yeah, you have to stop sharing, dude.
Yep.
How do we just sell?
So here you are. Here's your participant that has a type code of holder, and this statement says, when the subscriber is the patient, the participant element describing the subscriber, which is this one, shall not be present.
Well, that's the entire thing. Then that's our point.
The entire thing.
But in this case, it isn't, because it's, Bobby is the patient and Robert
Subscriber is the dad. Yeah.
So I think.
But what about, since you
name.
have the up here, it says the participant should contain 0 or 1. So do you think
that's
on the playing
this
entity?
Is the case when it shouldn't.
Right. I'm sorry.
This is describing the case when it shouldn't, when you shouldn't have.
Right. My
one of
question
these.
on the IG was around the playing entity, which is right above that.
No, this is the playing entity. This playing entity is a part of the participant where the type code is coverage.
Right. The patient, and down further it will say something about patient, I think.
And then the holder. So
and that's, I never understood that playing entity should ever be under the subscriber.
Yeah, if you look down there.
But it doesn't say that you can't have one.
Doesn't have name down there.
It doesn't. Do you see it up above it as ID, code, address, and down here it just has ID and address. We don't have a code and we don't have a playing entity.
But to Lisa's point, if it's not defined, you can always have it there if
you
the
can always include
structure allows for it.
Oh.
And it's the same structure. But my question, Lisa, was on the patient up above where it talks about playing entity, right there.
Yep.
It says it should contain 0 or 1. So if it says should, was Benjamin correct that it's a good best practice to put that there? We should no longer have the line about it being different.
The part about it being different doesn't have to do with this.
Right.
See, there's a very light gray line right here.
No.
This is a whole new thought.
I think you're misunderstanding me. So if the patient, if at the insurance company, the patient has a different name, in the old IG, it said that's when you would use playing entity. Like somehow the insurance company registered me as Ellen instead of Eleanor. That was the guidance given for playing entity in the past, that I should put down there what the insurance company knows me as. And the same would be true if my date of birth was wrong with the insurance company. Now, the date of birth one is you should fix it in my mind, but the name can commonly happen with marriage, right? the patient's chart might get updated, but the insurance, you may not have your marriage license copy to the people at your HR to get it to the insurance, blah, blah, blah.
Because I just want to be clear, the assumption would be the coverage on all insurance elements in this file are coverage for the subject of the entire document.
Right.
Right. So that would make sense then. Like, why are we repeating the name when my name is the thing at the very, very top of the document?
And Benjamin's argument was, we do that all over the place because there's no direct link from this to the record target patient.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we changed it to a should. It was there was guidance in the old IG, and I can probably still find it under C-CDA that said that you should only use it when it was different. Actually, the sample we have still says that, Dave, the one that you have.
Right. Name is needed if different from the name recorded on the health plan. But that's, I don't even know that. It feels like to me, it's not different than recorded on the health plan. Is the name that should be at the health plan different than the name at the top of this document, right?
It could be, is the point. So the idea is when I verified coverage, I verified it with the name Ellen, even though the patient's name is Eleanor.
Right. But if the top of my document does say Ellen,
it would say
or,
Eleanor. Well, my example would say Eleanor at record target, but she got set up by her HR department as Ellen.
Ellen. So that's what we would put here because we got But if she wasn't, if it was Eleanor everywhere, then no, we don't need that here.
I would put it for good I would put it in there for good practice.
Argued.
I'm saying this, you're writing down what's on your insurance card. So now I'm positively asserting the name on the insurance card is exactly the same as the name that's in the
or this target. Is what I use to verify coverage.
Right.
Too for that.
Like on my insurance card, I don't have my middle name. It's just David Carlson. So, I wouldn't, up above, I probably would have James as my middle name, but I don't have that in my insurance card. So.
And since Lisa showed this, we need to add the SDTC birth time to our example because it shall contain that. So you don't have to put the playing entity, but if you do, you shall have a date of birth.
Yeah, what is that? It was an
SDTC :birth uppercase time.
And that's then a date. What's the?
Yes. Oh gosh, what is the date format? Year, month, day.
4 digits for the year, 2 digits for the month, 2 digits.
I'm sorry.
For the day.
Yes. Thank you. CCYY. Unlike fire. Why did we change that?
And so if we do that down here, you also have to have that.
Yes. Well, no, because there's no template around that.
Oh, yeah. So there's no requirements on that one. I can just have the name. All right.
So Linda, what are the next steps with this? It looks like you guys had some really good progress with in terms of driving this out, but what comes next?
Well, we either take it to structured doc or examples task force. Maybe examples task force, they'll then point us back to structured doc and FM. I've kind of been this route a few times.
I think we discuss it at examples task force, so and clean it up a bit before we send
Agree.
Sorry,
definitely
before we send it to structured docs.
Agree. And so what we're going to do is Jean made a pull request, a branch this morning. We're going to send it to him and he's going to put what we updated this afternoon into the branch, and then we will And hopefully he'll share that branch name with us, so in case he's not on the examples task force, and we'll get it pulled and updated. And if all goes well, we'll just get it added. If not, it'll go back to one of the work groups or both. I think
Okay,
we're
good.
done, Dave.
Yeah, that sounds great.
anything
That's really excellent. Before we go to the next group, are there any last questions or comments for the pair group?
Hi, this is Erin. So I've been kind of listening in all day. You guys are super technical, and I do have some development background, so I can follow along. But just to get an idea, just in summation, is this normally how implementation-A-Thons go? You kind of go through the code, address existing issues, and try to like kind of work it out like in these small work groups.
This is sort of, I mean, today was a little bit different. When we used to meet in person, people would bring examples of how they did the results section, or in the very beginning, they sent out things for the different EMRs to build in their EMR, and then they compare them when they brought them back, and we'd say, oh, why did you put this here and I put this here? And then we decide a best practice around where it should go, or perhaps a template ID update if it makes sense, depending upon what it is. And then those would feed back into the site scorecard. And
I was just going to add, Linda, that it really depends on where we are with the HL7 standard for the items we're reviewing. I think this is really the first time not in person, that we kind of hack through everything and all stay focused on the same document instead of our own individual documents.
True.
Because
and I liked
we have one document. I liked it a lot. I think this was super effective. I think it brought the right people together. I think this is really important, especially as we move to the US CDI additional data elements that we aren't already in an IG guide. I think this is really important.
Yeah, I agree. From my perspective, this really does kind of feel like the old days, where we would, try to identify pain points and get everyone in the room to see if we can, find sort of at least a group consensus to how this might move forward.
And we had the expert, like we had a RIM expert in the room at the time, and I know that's changed a good bit, but we had I know Rob McCord would be in there, so he can help with value sets and issues there. So I think we've got a little bit closer to that today.
I'm going to type a couple questions, Yoginder, we had that we didn't get answered today, and into chat for you that we can take back. I can quickly say that we mentioned the prior auth section, or the referral section, whatever you want to call it. The other one was that it was unclear to us when you separate policy coverage into policy activity. Is it if everything's on the same card, all the identifiers go into one policy activity? And then I think it was Dave, whose wife had an insurance card, but then under her same employer, so same plan theoretically, but she had a separate card for her drugs. So how would we do that? And the other comment is there's nowhere in the policy that indicates whether it's medical, dental, pharmacy, all of the above. And I do not believe I was going to go look in the latest version of FHIR if they added anything there. There's the insurance type like PPO, but that PPO, we don't have any clue what it exactly covers.
But I think,
go ahead.
I thought like the PPO usually wasn't. I thought that was generally just the medical part of it, but I might be wrong.
And Linda, I was just going to mention that you mentioned the use case of having an insurance card for medical and then a separate one for drugs. I'll do you one better. My husband's a state employee at the state of Tennessee, and we have 3 cards. We have one for the major overall medical, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then we have a Delta Dental, and we have a Caremark card for prescriptions.
Prescriptions.
So we have
And
three.
And you could have vision on top of that.
You
maybe.
could, you
Right.
could.
And this, the code, at least this code system, and probably the same there. I mean, there are different things for dental and, separate from PPO and all that. So that's,
Just wanted to say, yes, that does exist. And I'm another, I'm
So I
another
mean,
example.
that's where it's like,
I
to
think-
me,
Oh, I think it's important to get these cleared up because one of the first places where patients have access to information through FHIR is these the APIs that allow you to retrieve your explanations of benefit. And so if there's some inherent organization for explanation of benefit that's divided along some lines like that, where Linda, the different profiles that are established for EOBs, it seems like it's worth establishing that ontology in everybody's minds to understand the difference between dental and vision and drugs, which they call pharmacy, and then I forget what the other one is.
Medical.
Like inpatient services
Medical.
and something else.
Oh, not
Facility or something
typically.
like- I don't know.
I mean, you can have, like, you can buy a major medical and then have, some sort of coverage on or none underneath it. But but what it covers
It seems
is
like that's that's a common way for thinking about what you're what's covered by this insurance versus that. Seems like it also organizes how your EOBs come to you.
You're not really. Your EOBs will come like pharmacy will come from pharmacy when you get a prescription filled, or you know what I mean? So you could have a card, like my card has both my medical and my drug coverage on it. But if I will get a separate EOB when I go to Walgreens and have an antibiotic filled for my doctor's prescription that same day or something. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
So for this example, Linda, will you be sending us the actual XML for inclusion or the link to the actual sample for notes? I'm just thinking.
Jean asked us, which us equates at the moment to Dave Carlson, to send us what we finished up with this afternoon. In other words, I should say thank you, Dave. He was kind enough to do the typing. And he knows XML, so it was simplistic for him. So thank you.
All right, perfect. So I'll look for your your list of outstanding items, and then we'll include.
There you go, Jean. I mean, Yoginder, there's my list of outstanding items.
Perfect. And then we'll add the example or our linked example to the notes. That was great. Who would like to go next? Which group? We've got discharge summary folks, or we have the specialty data elements.
I think Dee Dee only has a few more minutes. Let's let her go.
Well, it's Lisa that'll be going, and she can do this without me here. She really led the team there, and Catherine I think will still be on. I have a hard stop, unfortunately.
Well, do you want us to go? Because let's
It's
just
up
make
to you.
sure that we leave a
Go,
portion.
Lisa,
I don't want
leave
it. It's
20
not all about. It's
yeah,
not about me. So you
20
decide.
minutes. 20. I just want the specialty group to have a fair amount of time also.
So when does this section end? I'll be your timekeeper. Lisa and I do this.
10 after. Let's do 10 after.
Yeah, we'll give you strict timing of 20 minutes, Lisa.
20 minutes. Here we go. Okay, so we'll have deliverables to share with the group that will be this PowerPoint that extends the PowerPoint that Catherine started with, which if you don't want to put the first part in, you can just separate it, but this is what we built on. And what I'm going to go to, we covered already all of this until the goals. This is what we set for our goals at the 11:15 check-in. So we will be turning in an XML example of a discharge summary document that demonstrates the following. It has all of the requested sections that Catherine represented from the group in Texas was asking to be included. It does have more than that, which is an open issue. You know, they've asked for certain sections to not be present because of the noise, but we did not subtract sections at this point. But we did add hospital consultations, and we structured an entry to go inside that. I'll just flip to the XML. So this document has got, it might be nicer to just look at it in readable form. It has a hospital consultation section, and we added a single entry for a nutrition consult that was done by Betty Eatright, a nurse, and on June 18th. And then we added a clinical note that is a nutrition and diet consult clinical note, and added this narrative note to it. We did a lot to clarify the procedures and the results section. We associated them with each other, and so we put them very close to each other, you know, right next to each other in the document, just to make it easier to see. And then we related the procedure information to the results section information when the procedure was something that would have a result associated with it. Basically, diagnostic imaging, laboratory tests, and other clinical tests that get resulted. And then we organized these sections with subsections in them so that you could appreciate the constructs or the relationships between this information, so that the procedures section was broken into diagnostic imaging procedures, laboratory procedures, and other procedures. And then I haven't implemented it yet, but there will be a link that is tied to the entry relationship, you know, that utilizes the entry relationship and presents itself as an HTML linkable in the narrative, so that if you click on it, it takes you actually to the place where this chest X-ray is resulted. So it would take you to right here. And then the laboratory procedures, we have the urinalysis. Again, that's something that would be resulted. And then there are two other procedures that are just activities that get, you know, interventions that were performed that are not, that don't have an associated diagnosis, and they aren't resulted. So there's no other, you know, linkage for there. And the last thing that we did is that for test results, we showed demonstration of the section time range entry being included in here to clearly state that the only results that are presented in this document are for testing that was performed between June 18th and June 22nd of 2016. So that exercises quite a lot of templates and does a lot to kind of clear up some of the, you know, just the mess that happens in that area. We added additional guidance on using clinical notes, specifically to show a clinical notes section for nursing notes and a clinical notes section for discharge summary notes, so that you can see the difference between a discharge summary document and how a discharge summary document might include discharge summary notes. The material is very sparse because we just kind of made it up, but the thing that I thought would be a little bit telling for discharge summary clinical notes is we put 3 notes in. One has that basic statement, which is you should always start planning for discharge the day you're admitted. So Nurse Nancy was diligently putting some clinical notes in from the day that this patient was admitted on the 18th of June. And then she continued to work on some other details of the discharge plan to kind of get things solidified, and then finalize the discharge planning on the 25th. So those are our 3 discharge type of clinical notes, and then we have, we have other places where there's clinical notes in other spots as well, but the nursing notes was another example of how you can use the clinical notes section template to represent some other specific types of clinical notes. And I talked about section time range already. Clarify the single encounter focus of the discharge summary document. What we did to do that is in the example, in the, I think up in the encompassing encounter in the header, we put this documentation that says, what's the right information to be included in the encompassing encounter, key data elements present, key questions answered. I didn't add more documentation about that yet, but we did say that how should this information be related to information in the in the encounters section in the body of the document. And we wrote maybe I didn't put it here. Let's go down to the section. Should have put it in both spots. What I do here? It must be case sensitive or something that my search isn't working. Okay. So this is what we wrote, and I'll put it in. I'll move it to be in both. If an encounter section is included in an encounter summary document, the only encounter entry that should be included shall be for the one encounter that is the encompassing encounter in the header of the document. The ID of the encompassing encounter and the ID of the encounter activity entry should match.
So in other
That's
words,
how we
no
added that.
prior or later visit. Well, prior, I guess, should be in there. Right? Is the premise?
It's just about this one encounter.
Thank you.
Oops. And what did you just say, Linda? I'll add that sentence. The document is about, the document tells the story. One single encounter. I'll say the discharge summary.
I said some comment about not encounters before or after this one. Before or after the encompassing encounter. But I think what you got is clear.
Is that all right? Okay. All right, so add that. And then we said we were going to show the use of subsections to combine assessment and plan sections into a single section. And we ended up doing that not only for all of the sections, like health concerns, goals, and then interventions or treatment plan of treatment stuff and instructions, but we also demonstrated the use of subsections to separate the procedures and the results and make all those relationships clearer. This is really one of the major novel things that's been done in this document, I think. The most, sort of totally de novo new stuff that has never really been demonstrated anywhere else. And then in terms of guidance on the order of information, still pretty strongly feeling that this is really something that's up to kind of being handled by style sheets, and that it's really important to figure all this out because how you render the information really is a patient safety issue. And we think that we need to do more to include end users in this work. Joginder, on the notion of how you render the information that is present or provided for exchange, and how to clarify that in fact is different from and something that should be transparent and seeable as a source of truth and as a actual legitimate thing that can be seen, even if organizations decide that they want to do something to render information post-consumption inside of a new receiving system, that's not the same thing as providing access to and source document rendering. And so this is the area where we really want to do some additional work for August in terms of demonstrating how multiple style sheets could be created or developed and made available so that users would have the ability to view source material in a variety of ways, not just view it in the context of whatever system consumes the information. And that's it for us. So our deliverables are a PowerPoint and four documents. The three documents that the three sample discharge documents that we found when we first went looking to basically, there's not very many examples out there for people to draw from. We did find three, and we kind of analyzed all three of them, and that was what we used as the basis for starting our example. So there would be the three examples that we found and analyzed, and then the fourth one that we created, and the PowerPoint presentation that I just went over.
Oh, this is great. And then what are the next steps for this, Lisa? What happens now?
Well, I think Dee Dee and Catherine are going to figure out how do we start to get more exposure. We probably owe bringing this example back to Examples Task Force and see what they want to do, because maybe it's a better example to include in the repo, maybe in addition to the one that's there right now. And then for August, it would be working between now and then to see if we can come back and be ready to work on more of the rendering side of things, to deal with order and the amount of content, the too much or too little problem.
Yeah, that sounds great. Are there any questions for Lisa and group? This is really great stuff. All right, you've answered everyone's questions, Lisa. Good job. And
Yay.
and ahead of schedule. Jim, you guys are up.
All righty. Well, I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Dennis. So we started out, we ended up concentrating on looking at the, the physical exam section of it. And when we went to the implementation guide, it was pretty obvious there was not a whole lot of guidance on how to use that. And everybody was in agreement that the physical exam section is very important for the data that needs to be developed for the specialty EHRs. So what we really concentrated on was getting sort of an organizational flow of what's going to have to be developed. But there's going to need to be implementation guides. There's going to need to be all the examples written. So we really started a process that everybody understands is a pretty extensive process to create all of this data that needs to be created. So I'll turn it over to Dennis to show you what we worked on.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Yeah, so we had a little bit of a rocky start to try and just get everybody and everything on track. But
Yeah.
sorry. Everyone's okay. So basically what we did is we decided that one of the best ways to try and tackle this was to create a fleshed out version of the physical exam, as Jim mentioned. And so we started looking at the physical exam section to see, what were the conformance statements that were on there, which Matt S from Epic, shared out. And we looked at the value sets on, the different disciplines that would actually be able to use the physical exam. And there's actually quite an extensive list, 53 different ones. Of course, we're going to concentrate on the eye, not ear. That'll come later. And we kind of showcased a little bit of the HTML view, because some people, when you're going through the technical details and trying to kind of get all the categories and subcategories, there is a little bit of difficulty trying to imagine what it's going to look like in the final product. So we showed a snapshot of what the HTML view used to look like. So for refraction measurements, how would you put in all that data and how would it be structured and or readable? And so that was just a sample there. And then we talked about maybe, putting out an optical notation. So there's so many data points and difficulty in terms of mapping these data points. Can we use LOINC? Do we have to use SNOMED? We talked about, even if we couldn't get all the data mapped, would there be an opportunity or a way to just do it in a readable format? And we did come up with what an optical notation would look like, but we don't have something like that that would represent all the data in eye care. And so it wasn't really something that we pursued. It was just something that we thought about during the process of developing.
I sent a message. Do you think that they don't like us anymore?
You guys hearing
That's
extra?
Catherine. Catherine's not on
Catherine, you
mute.
need to go on mute.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, is that just somebody hacking into my headphone? No, okay, just kidding.
But we like you,
Okay.
Catherine.
Yes, of course. So what we did do is, Matt and Jeremy and Matt D as well from DHTIT and all the different, people that were on the call, we kind of got together with the help of Dr. Perry to try and make sure that we could document all the root levels and sub-levels that we would want to put into a physical exam. And so this has kind of got the start of the LOINC code for each root section and some, whether it's an organizer or an observation, and to actually document. And this is something we tried to undertake previously at a prior IAT, but we didn't actually achieve it. And then it never actually got completed. So what we've done is we've revamped it a little bit such that we're actually documenting all the different systems and subsystems of the physical findings for an eye narrative, so that we can actually structure this to a point that we could start to create conformance statements, an XML sample. And this, there's a lot of, particular detail here, but you'll see, we've got the visual acuity, and then, they do diagnostic tests. And in eye care, there's a lot of different diagnostic tests that get done, color vision, stereopsis. There's just an enormous number of tests that get performed depending on the circumstances. And then, of course, you've got your refractions, different types of refractions. Some are from instruments, some are subjective and cyclopedic, depending on the instance of the data being recorded. And then, of course, you've got your main systems like the external binocular, and then you've got all the anterior segment of the eye, the posterior. So we went through and tried to document every level we could, at least from the eye and all the subsystems. And then, of course, we started to show that you would be able to do that for any specialty. So the idea is that because there's so many specialties, that they could also do something similar. So we didn't get to doing any XML or anything in depth, but our action items would be to complete the full set of the eye care data requirements to at least 2 levels. And we're pretty close. I think we got through most of the first level and almost all of the second level. And Dr. Jim Grew, I guess, would be the lead for that in order to kind of flesh that out with Dr. Perry or any other person that would like to be involved in that, and we'll have to organize something to complete that step. The second thing would be to assign all the LOINC codes to all the organizers and observations that we've done. So with Alpha Matt, we started searching for LOINC codes to see if we could find different, root codes that could be used to talk about the anterior segment and the different sections of the eye. And so I'm going to champion that and complete that as part of a deliverable for the IAT group. And then, of course, I'll take the existing IAT example document that we created a year ago, and I'm going to adjust it to follow the new structure that we've created in the document today. And then the third thing was, the whole purpose to this was to try and come up with a way to take the physical exam and create something that's eye care specific. So there will be an eye care one, there will be a foot one, pediatrics, and there'll be one for the different disciplines, where we'll create an implementation guide that we can present to be approved and included, so that when somebody does implement the eye care data, it'll use the predefined LOINC codes. So we'll have LOINC codes for the different sections, and those will be the LOINC codes. If it's not part of that value set, then it would be rejected. So the idea is really to achieve an implementation guide for the physical exam subsections, starting with eye care as being the first one. And that was pretty much everything we got through. Anybody else who thinks I missed anything or would like to add to that, if they could jump in.
Jim, I have one question. Oh, sorry, Dennis, I have one question.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, this is awesome, and I'm imagining that this information would go inside an encounter summary type document, a progress note or a consult note that's done by some eye doctor person who's doing the physical exam. And what I would be wondering is, if, let's say on January 15th, I had my annual eye exam, and I came home with a document that told all this level of detail about my eye exam. And in August, I went to my annual exam, and the day before I show up for my annual exam, my doctor pulls from the TEFCA network a CCD to just kind of like get a summary of my medical history since they saw me a year before that, just to find out, I've been in the hospital, what doctors had I been to, I had my mammogram, did I have my whatever, in my annual eye exam. What would they see in my CCD that would allow my PCP to see that, on some date, whatever I said, January 15th, I went to the eye doctor and I had my annual eye exam?
So that's a good point. So the objective for what we started here was for all the data to be structured and consumable, which isn't the case for many systems, right? I mean, when you're reconciling a particular chart, most systems are only bringing in medications, allergies, and problems. So some will bring in results and procedures and others, but when you're consuming a C-CDA, the idea is that we're trying to, promote and facilitate, trying to get other EHRs, eye care, and, the larger ones to be able to consume more data and result level data that is required to be shared in order for an eye exam. So I would expect that all the appropriate systems that were actually detailed in your exam would be made available and consumable for your second visit. And
I'm not thinking that we want to see all this level. If I go for a patient summary, I don't want all of this in the CCD.
I see. So
yes,
you're
a consult note. It has all of this stuff. The document that was created on January 15th. I can see that. But if on August 1st somebody makes a CCD that's a patient summary about me, I would expect to see that there was an encounter on January 15th. It was an eye exam or an annual eye exam or a cataract follow-up visit or whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
A little
Sorry.
bit of this information, not all of it. And I'm just wondering is if you guys, when you think about this, you could answer the question not only how do we give more detailed information in an eye care specialty specific document type, but then what's the guidance when that kind of care is known about? How do you summarize it in the patient summary so that all this stuff doesn't start dumping into the CCDs?
Yes.
I think that's the next level. We're not at that level yet. What we're doing right now is we're saying if we're going to meet the requirements for US CDI 3, we have to have the ability to put everything that's recorded into a CCDA or into a CCD. So the first level we're just identifying everything that needs to go in for any possible purpose. But then when we create the structures, the specific output, then we can choose what we want in there, because every output is going to be different. Almost nobody is ever going to want
Yeah,
all of this.
it's
It'll be at the
absolutely,
output side we
yeah.
decide that.
And that's, so by default, I think the understanding, Lisa, in that case would be, we wouldn't put all the systems in there. So it would be depend on the type of document you're creating. If you're creating a referral note or a consult note to send back to a PCP because you had a visit, you're not going to include all the eye care data.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense. But if you were doing a referral to an ophthalmologist because you were getting a cataract evaluation done, you know, they saw signs of cataract, they thought, well, maybe you need to get your lenses replaced, so we're going to send you for a cataract evaluation, then we would include a lot more sections. So the idea is to define the physical exam with all the may sections that could be used, but you're right, you're not going to just include all of that data by default. It just wouldn't make sense.
Right.
The context
and I just want
has
to
to
be very, very
Yeah.
sensitive, because so many people throw around the phrase CCD. And I don't
Yeah.
think the goal here is to put any of this in a CCD. This doesn't belong in a patient summary.
Summary,
This is some
no.
kind of a specific encounter focused document, consult note, progress note, something, even history and physical
History of physical,
would be
yeah,
another document
exactly.
template, but
Yep.
not a CCD.
No,
So-
so they would not go into the standard CCD by default. They would have to, so it depends on the different systems that are actually implementing it. So if you pick a referral note, what we did in the systems that I've worked on is that it'll create a default set of included sections, and you would only include, you know, additional sections like the physical exam and even portions of the physical exam if they were appropriate for that particular document. But you're right, it would not go into the standard set. The problems would, the medications, the allergies, the encounters, the regular stuff would be in there by default.
Right.
So this is Dr. Perry. I wanted to chime in and state that some of the challenges specialists really face is when we send the CCD to other specialists, say an optometrist to an ophthalmologist, there's not any information that's relevant to the examination of the eye. So I believe our thought process was, you know, creating specialist types of documents that we'd be able to import the discrete data from a CCD back into our system to be able to view that data. So I didn't envision it as going into the standard CCD as much as I envisioned it being an ancillary CCD that we would allow, that would be able to import back into the exam that the specialist is importing. But I do agree, you know, globally being able to access data, if I had a chronic disease and I would say I was a diabetic and I saw my primary care, my endocrinologist, my podiatrist, and my optometrist or ophthalmologist, and all that information had to go into a CCD. What is the main portal or the hub of information so that that information isn't siloed? And so that's a big question that, you know, okay, well, I can generate a CCD, but it doesn't have the information from the podiatrist in it, nor the PCP. So that's kind of just a couple of points that I wanted to make. And also, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate being able to participate in this meeting.
Well, thank you, Dr. Perry. We always enjoy when clinical folks come and help to contribute to the stew that is being created here. And I think that sometimes the specificity of the terms that we use, like I'm not sure when people outside of folks that live and breathe these template definitions use the expression CCD, if you and I are actually thinking of the same thing when you say it. So a CCD is a specific type of consolidated CDA document. It's called the continuity of care document. It is a patient summary that covers a span of time. It's not about a single encounter. And so when you talk about making a CCD, in the story that you're telling, I'm with you. I'm following that it should be a CDA document that allows data to be exchanged and consumable by another system. But I think you're talking about some type of document that's about a specific encounter, not
Yes.
a CCD.
You're right.
Yeah,
No, that
you're
is.
right. So
This
when
would
we're
happen-
communicating, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
This would happen for each encounter. And then if you wanted to show multiple encounters, you're going to pull the data from those multiple encounters if that's what somebody's asking for. So I don't think the organization we're putting together here is not a document. This is a list of what data items need to be mapped so that we know where to put them into any C-CDA document. So we're not doing this for a specific document. We're saying this is our guidance that we're going to use to figure out all the items that go in the anterior chamber. Let's identify those. And then in some documents, we're going to include it. In some documents, we're not going to include it when we create the document.
But I do agree with Lisa, though, from the CDA document type, which is a type of C-CDA, we would not include this data by default in any patient summary because it wouldn't make sense.
But that's not at this level that we're defining that. Right.
Okay.
And is that because it's not relevant to the patient? It's more needed for the provider? I'm just trying to figure out why that wouldn't be part of their,
it's more
summary.
provider specific. So you're sending information. So the idea is to get the eye care data into the system and make it so that it's structured and consumable. But the second thing is to make sure that we're passing that data to the doctors or the clinicians that it's relevant to. So if an ophthalmologist is doing a cataract extraction evaluation, they want to know the details of the acuities. They want to know the details of all the things that you did and performed throughout the exam that would be relevant to them actually, using that for the care of the patient and to move their care forward. But for a summary across 20 years of a patient, you wouldn't include all of those details. You would include the diagnosis, the procedures, the encounters, the high level things, but not the eye care
so
specific.
more for like a referral note.
It's more for like a referral
document.
or it's to the purpose of the doctor that's going to be interpreting the information. Is it going to be useful for them or is it going to be necessary for their care?
Right. So I think that's one of the things that we're saying. Not only are there multiple types of C-CDA documents for, let's say, referrals within the specialties, there's a whole bunch of different kind of referrals that require a completely different set of information, and you don't want to send all that information to everybody. So if I'm referring a patient for a corneal surgery, there's a whole bunch of detailed stuff in the cornea that needs to go, but the retina stuff doesn't even matter to them. If I'm referring to somebody for diabetes that is all in the retina, then they don't worry about the anterior segment. So even within referrals, there's a whole bunch of different data that's appropriate to send for those referrals. So I would contend that not only there's a referral C-CDA, within the specialties, we need to be able to create 20 different referral C-CDAs with different information in each and call it up by sort of topic.
So how does this fall into like patient information blocking for patients? Because we're saying they don't really need this information, but the EHR is storing the information and has it available.
I think it would have
that?
to do with asking for the right kinds of documents.
Yeah.
Right.
So so we have this problem also. There's specification for how to do a CDA laboratory report. Very detailed document only about lab information. Now we know that the lab information is important in other places, and so in the results section of a CCD or the results section of a discharge summary, even sometimes the results section maybe of a referral note, you might have a certain lab result that's reported because it's relevant, but you never repeat the entire laboratory, all the information that's in the laboratory report document.
Yeah.
We have that with diagnostic imaging. It's just like you have to learn the right document to ask for to get the level of detail that you really want.
Right. Now,
But
if a
that's not
patient,
something a patient's gonna learn and know. So how do
Yeah.
how do we navigate that?
Well, the LOINC document ontology is supposedly the tool for doing that. We already know how to ask for the most general type of document in a certain kind of class, like a most general progress note. We know that that's, 11852-2, the most general kind of consult note. And then there's, 500 more specific types of consult notes underneath that general kind of consult note, and they can have lots of different nuance to them. And the reason that you go to LOINC and ask for a different document code is because you've got a document that has a different sort of nature about it, different kinds of information that should be present, and they make up a new code for you and go, oh, that's a retinopathy something consult note, and then, Dr. Grew has a hook that he can hang some specs that go, oh, for that one, you need to include all this kind of information in it.
right, but that at this point, for one extra point for that though, Lisa, if a patient requests their full chart from a provider, you need to be able to create a document that includes everything, and that for the information blocking part of it. But outside of a patient asking for information,
But if you ask your eye doctor that, Dennis, the information that the eye doctor has about you is going to be different than the information that your GP or your OBGYN has about you.
Oh, of course,
or your dentist,
of course,
for that
absolutely.
matter.
But
Yeah,
what
no,
we're
that's
saying
my
is,
point.
like,
Yeah.
What are we giving them? I mean, we have to export the whole database to them.
Well,
Like,
keep
what
in
are-
mind, I think a bigger issue here is we're making a huge change in the way medicine works, right? If you went back to paper charts, nobody requested anything other than an exam, right? What did you do during this exam? But what we're trying to do as a country is say to people, hey, you go ahead and request something on a patient. But historically, the way we shared information was all in a push system. The doctor that had the information wrote a letter to another doctor, and that doctor pushing it knew what was relevant, right? The problem is when you go to a pull system, the people pulling it don't know what's relevant. That's the problem.
Right.
There's not really any guidance. I think that's what you're getting to. There's no guidance for what you want. Does that mean when you pull it, you're going to say, I want everything, and you get this just masses of stuff? That's the problem with moving to a pull system, is that side doesn't know what's relevant.
Yeah.
Rochelle,
go ahead.
Rochelle, I think, and there's two sort of concepts around data blocking. If you're just doing what is included in a C-CDA or in US Core FHIR that represents the US CDI, whichever version you have to be compliant with. Now it's V1,
it doesn't matter. There is no version. You have to have all EHI, which is the designated record.
Yes. And that's part
What is
2.
that? Is this part of the designated
That is essentially
record?
dumping your data tables. Epic has already done it, and
like a CSV
you have
file.
to tell them it doesn't have to be FHIR, it can be anything. You just have to have documentation around what you provide.
Right, and that's the B10 measure that's coming up for the end of the year. And you're right. And if a patient asks for their eye care data, what's going to satisfy that request? They're probably going to be fine if they get their invoices and their contact lens, prescriptions and their glasses prescriptions. They're probably not going to ask for additional data. But if they did, you have to be able to conform to it.
Right.
So someone just said that it's defined by the designated record set. Is that defined by each EHR?
But designated record set covers everything, which is electronic and in some cases printed material is also valid for the designated record set. And that it's a big black hole, if you ask me. They say it's all EHI, but what does that really mean?
Right.
It refers back to HIPAA and how you keep your what you define as your designated record set. And
I agree,
so
but I was looking at that, and does that mean 835s? Do you have to give them your EOBs from the insurance company? They say all billing, all transactions, all EDI. It's like, to me, that's just, it's too much of an open book, but I agree
can't
with you.
give them an 835 because it's not exclusive to
them.
one patient.
Exactly.
You could give them the posting of that EOB into your system.
Correct. And that's how if somebody was going to do it, you're right. You wouldn't give them the exact EOB, but you'd process it against the invoice and apply the payment and then give them the transactional history, I guess, for their
Yeah.
data only.
So
Agreed.
the purpose of what we're working on here is not for meeting the HIPAA definition of, you know, the designated representative. We're looking at meeting the US CDI 3 level of the data that's recorded during an exam. That's what we're doing here.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like it's very, very early days, and I think you guys have a great start. I mean, I do like this outline structure as a means of driving out some of the conversation. I think that's excellent. With respect to some of the next steps that you have noted here, is that just going to be your own group working on it on your own at the side of your desk, or?
Well, number 2 and 3, I mean, I can, number 2 and 3, no, the loin codes for everything that we have defined, I'll put the loin codes in because, you know, for time, we were just putting the titles and not actually, I didn't look all the codes up. So I will provide a document with all the loin codes for each of the sections we put in today. And then I will create an example that I'll send back to the IAT to share out, which basically takes our original, you know, iCare IAT with a visual acuity and the refraction, a manifest and a final, and I'll convert that to conform to what I think we were describing today. So those 2 will be deliverables today, and then the rest of it will probably be longer term, correct?
Yeah, so one of the objectives of this is, you know, this is all new. I mean, we're using a physical exam section that hasn't been used very much in the past, but is critical for the type of data that we need to create in the specialties for going ahead and meeting US CDI 3. But I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of data points that have got to be you know, put into this outline. The same thing's got to happen for all the other specialties. There has to be, you know, IGs created. There's a lot of work. So the other part of this is to hopefully start a specialty track within HL7 to pick up where we started here and continue the process.
That sounds great.
That's excellent. Are there any other questions for our specialty group?
I just do want to reiterate also that the existing dental specialty IG sort of went in a different direction here, but I still think it you know, can provide some valuable like a starting point for an example of this having already been done successfully. So, you know, I like the physical exam findings section based approach that we're using. But ultimately, you know, one other thing I would like to see, I guess, is figuring out how to, you know, sync that up with the existing dental stuff.
Absolutely. And that's why we need to get some dental people involved, pull out that, compare it, and then compare it to what we've put together here, see what the difference is. So I think that'll be an important part of the process. I'm a big believer of, you know, taking advantage of anything that's been done by anybody in the past. Let's not dismiss anything. Let's look at what's already done and try to incorporate it as a starting point.
Do y'all have anybody in the behavioral health specialty in that group yet?
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to try to find somebody for y'all to join in, I think, if that's okay.
Anybody that has contacts with dentistry, podiatry, physical therapy, any of those other groups, you know, we don't think, so this is a question actually for the group. I think we're thinking we could do that within sort of one specialty umbrella, that we don't need to create an eye care group and a dental group and everybody else. I don't think we'll be successful doing that. I think it would be better to try to pull everybody together. And Dennis, if you just scroll up a little bit in this document, see at the end where we just put for the foot narrative, we just put 3 parts of the foot, right? Because we didn't know how they'd break it down. But the point is we could do this for any, for physical findings for any group. And we could all work together, because I think that a lot of the basic principles would follow through for each of the specialties.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think with that, we'll move on to just a bit of a recap of our last couple of days. Jean's mentioned it before, and we always say it every time we go into one of these things, we always wonder if we're going to have enough to talk about, or if, and every single time we have a lot to talk about. And that is really a credit to everyone that's bringing things forward and leading the tracks. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Coming out of today, we had 3 action items that came out of yesterday's discussion. And that's, we have the follow-up with the direct trust, we have the follow-up with UCOM, and then we have logging issues against C-CDA discharge summary. We do plan to have another IAT in August. I've posted the topic suggestion page to the chat, so please use that. Submit any ideas. We heard a few coming out of the discussions today already, but we'd really like to start generating some of that agenda for August. We'll be wrapping up notes from the event, and it's in the page that I just put in the chat. For those that were leading the track, please send me or send Susan your materials, and then we conclude them in the notes. And with that, thank you, everyone. I understand Dave wants to have the floor.
Yep, just 1 minute. Thank you to Jean Joginder, Susan, Jim for all their great work planning this event. I will have my usual post-event tasks, including sending out a survey to everyone. Please fill it out because we do learn from that. The recordings will be posted to HL7's YouTube area and linked through the IAT pages, and as well as the Zoom notes. They will be linked as well. So everything will be on that IAT Confluence page. That's all I had, because I know it's been a long 2 days. So,
Dave, is that page open?
it should be. It's
Okay. No, I mean for anyone. Do they have to have attended to get access? Or
no.
Thank you.
Yep, it is open. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?